What's up, Red Rock? Welcome to Church Online. All right, I'm in my backyard right now. All right, this is how we do church online. I know y'all are mostly watching it from your living rooms and watching it from your homes, and so we figured why not shoot one from my backyard and just kind of keep it low key and chill. But man, if you're new with us, my name's Petey. I'm the lead pastor here at Red Rock, and I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait till we can gather again in person, and I can put a face with a name and meet you in person. And honestly, that's been for me one of the coolest things about this whole quarantine season is the amount of emails and messages that I've received from people in our community who have told me that they have never stepped foot into Red Rock Church, but they've been tracking with us through Church Online, and that they can't wait to be a part of our family once we get back to our in-person gatherings. And man, that is just so cool. I love how God's moving in that way. And so if that's you, welcome to the family. We cannot wait to meet you in person. On that note, I do want to say a couple things about our in-person gatherings. All right. Right now, we are going to continue to meet in groups. Right now, our groups are starting to get to reconvene their in-person meetings. And so if you're not in a group right now, a small group, we would love to help you get in one. All right, go to redrockchurch.org/nextsteps, and you can join a group that way. A group is a great place to get to know other people at Red Rock, but ultimately to grow, to talk with other people about what you're learning and process it and apply it to your life. And so many of our groups are going to start resuming their in-person gatherings in the next few weeks. So right now is a great time for you to join a group. But when it comes to our in-person gatherings, our large group gatherings, I know that there's a lot of information coming out, a lot of churches saying they're going to do this or that. And I just want to update you. For us, we're going to continue to do church online for a few more weeks. We just feel like it's best to express a little bit more caution, a little bit more patience as we get ready to open. Trust me, we all want to reopen as soon as we can. But we think the best way right now for us to love our community, to love our neighbors, and to respect and honor the government officials right now that are requesting that we do as much as we can online. We think the best way to do all that is just to keep doing what we've been doing for a few more weeks. All right, and as soon as that plan changes, I will tell you, you will be the absolute first to know. And we can't wait for it to happen. But we just feel like we need a few more weeks, play it a little slower, be a little safe in this way. So today, what we're going to do, we'd originally planned on jumping back into a series of messages that we'd been doing called A Church the World Needs. All right. About a month ago, we started that group of messages called A Church the World Needs, and we talked about our values. Our church values of raw, passionate, and clear. Raw, passionate, and clear. And so we're going to actually jump back into that group of messages next week. We're going to bump it back one more week. We're going to jump back into that group of messages and talk a little bit more about what it means to be raw, passionate, and clear, and how those things play with each other, and how we do that in each of our ministry environments, in our weekly gatherings, in our groups, and our serving teams, and what difference we believe that's going to make in our community. But this week, what we know, the kind of church our world needs right now is a nimble church. A church that's flexible and able to call an audible and change our plans. And in light of everything we experienced over the past couple weeks, since the death of George Floyd, and all of the riots that are happening, and all of the discussions that are happening around the topic of racism in our country, we felt like it was best to call an audible today and to do something a little different. All right, so today's message is a conversation between myself and a good friend of mine named Myron L. Myron is an incredible man of God, an incredible worship leader, and Myron is married to his beautiful wife, Josie, and they have a beautiful, sweet daughter, cutest kid in the world named Elena. And Myron is from a great family. He serves in a great church, and Myron has an incredible perspective on the issue of racism and how he as a black man is walking through this in our country right now, and how he thinks that the church should walk through it. And ultimately what we get to in this conversation is the heart of Jesus in all of this. And that's the thing we want. We want to know what's the heart of Jesus in the midst of this cultural crisis that we're in. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into that message right now. So go ahead and lean in and learn and listen, and let's ask God to teach us about what it means to be a church the world needs in the midst of this cultural moment.
All right. Well, Myron L., my main man, is in the house. Red Rock, you better welcome him. Myron, dude, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. So Myron, we go back 7-8 years or so working together. Myron is an incredible worship pastor in Indianapolis at the church that I came from. And, I've got so many good memories of serving with Myron. And, dude, I think about, I was thinking about this the other day, the time that sticks out the most. I mean, there's a bunch of times that I've been on stage preaching, or I've been on stage doing something, and you've been leading worship that I can remember. The one that I probably remember the most is when you and Justin were leading together.
Oh, yeah.
Downtown at the library. And I was doing some sort of onstage thing, and you guys went into Easy Like Sunday Morning behind me.
Yeah.
and like not singing it, just playing it, and I caught it. I was like, whoa, wait, hold up. He's like Sunday Morning, and the crowd just went nuts. I was like, this is such, like, y'all just like surprised me on that. It was beautiful. It was beautiful, man.
Yeah.
But dude, we're so grateful to have you pouring into our church and speaking into my life and speaking into the life of the people that are going to watch this all over Colorado Springs, man. I know that we're just in that, like we were talking about just a little bit ago, this time in our culture and in our country is just crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's just so much happening, man. And so, you're a Jesus follower. You've got an incredible family, and you come from an incredible family. I mean, I always look at your family and I think, man, if I could just like spend Christmas with your family and hear your mom singing and playing piano like she does, I mean, gosh, good grief. But you have such a unique perspective and voice into all this. I mean, being an African American worship leader in a predominantly white church, there's just so much that you have experienced and so much you bring to the table in this conversation, man. And so I knew when all this started breaking loose and things were going crazy in our country, I just thought, man, I want to talk to Myron so bad and just hear from you on it and let you and introduce you to our people, so our people can benefit from you, man. So, dude, I know we got a lot of stuff to talk through, and I know everybody watching this is thinking, like, where is this going to go? How's it going to go? And so everybody like knows kind of our MO at Red Rock is we're raw. We're trying to be raw, passionate, and clear. And so that's kind of what we're hoping to here is like, we don't have a lot scripted on this conversation. We're not worried about it being picture perfect. And I've already told Myron he doesn't need to feel like the pressure to represent the entire Black community in this. He's representing his perspective. And I know his perspective is close to the heart of God, and it's gonna benefit us, man. So with all that being said, man, let's just jump in and let's just see what God does. Let's see where the conversation goes. All right.
Absolutely.
So, man, just tell us what has these past 2 weeks since the murder of George Floyd. Obviously, he's not the only one. I mean, he's, in that 10-day span, there was 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And so what has, since then, it's been the riots and there's just the protests and peace walks and marching and social media posts for days, like all that stuff. So, man, what have these past 2-3 weeks been like for you personally?
Yeah, it's been a lot. I mean, I feel like the spectrum of emotions that I felt has been so wide. Like, I think one minute I'm angry and I'm sad and, just hurt and just have this like sick feeling in my stomach. And then the next minute I'm like, I'm hopeful and I'm thankful that so many people are starting to speak out and like wanting to learn and to grow and to, stand up for change. And so it's like one minute I'm hopeful, and I'm grateful. And then the next minute I'm like, I'm hurt and I'm angry again, so it's like, I keep going back and forth, man. But I think, the honestly, like the um,
Aubrey.
yeah, Ahmaud Arbery. That when I heard the news of that, man, that one wrecked me because I felt like I could relate to that. You know, me, my family, we live in like predominantly white neighborhoods. You know what I mean? And so I could go for a jog, and I'm like, that's me. You know what I mean? Like that could easily be me any day. And so that one wrecked me, man. And so I was, I'm like, how can I can't just go about the rest of my day like normal. You know what I mean? Like I can't just go. It was hard for me to even like go back to work and do meetings and stuff. Like just, I it was just hard for me. And so that was, the first one. And then, the next two happened. And I think, like I said, there's been this wave of like people that haven't really spoken out before that are starting to speak out. And I think again, on one hand, it's been great to see just all of the support and like outpouring of like love. And I've had so many people reach out to me, saying, I see you, I'm here for you. I'm thinking about you. I'm praying about you.
Wow.
How can I learn? How can I grow? And so that's been great. I think on the other hand, it's also like it's also sad that it took these tragedies for it to get to this point. You know what I mean? Like, I think in a lot of, we've been trying to have these conversations for years, and a lot of times it's falling on deaf ears. You know what I mean? And so it's like almost like, why now? And is it genuine? These are all just thoughts and questions that are going through my head. And so this is a lot. It's a lot, just to process.
Yeah. And I think that, even the white people I've talked to about this, they sit back and they go, this is just utterly exhausting. And I think, I wonder how exhausting it is for the black and brown people of our country.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's exhausting for the entire country to go through, and just to constantly and it seems like if you step away from social media or step away from the news for a day, something happens.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just constant.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for us, so because I think that one of the questions that a lot of people ask is like, especially people that maybe aren't as familiar with the history of racism in our country, aren't familiar, maybe don't have a lot of minority friends, and they think about all this. I think there is and no one wants to say it, but I think there is if we're going to be raw, we're going to be transparent, we're going to be vulnerable, we're just going to say what's really deep down in the hearts.
Yeah.
I think some people go, yeah, I know racism was a thing in the past.
Oh yeah.
But like, is it really still a thing? Like,
I
mean, bad stuff happens with cops all the time, and blah, 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 like all that. So man, just tell us, I think just to back up a little bit, even from the past 2 weeks, to more of this, a little bit of the story of your life. Cause I know from knowing you that you've got personal stories and experiences.
Yeah.
What it's been like to be Black.
Yeah.
And I know that it's not just you, it's like, it's every minority has these stories. It's like, I joked a couple weeks ago that like, if you get a room full of pastors together and you ask them if they're crazy church people out there, not that anyone watching this is crazy. All right, Red Rock, you're good. We love you. None of y'all are crazy. You're good people. But, but like the room full of pastors would laugh. Like, we've got stories for days.
Right.
And I was talking last week, or a couple weeks ago, saying like the same is true for any minority. You ask them if racism's real and if it's happened to them, they will laugh you out of the room with stories for days.
Yeah.
That are horrible.
Yeah.
That are gut wrenching. And so, man, just give us some perspective on what has it been like for you. What is that like for you to be Black, and have you been on the receiving end of racism?
Yeah. Well, this question is it's so loaded, because you talk about racism in America and there's levels, you know what I mean? There's like microaggressions, there's obviously overt racism, but then it's also like, our encounters with race you see it in the TV shows that we watch, in the movies that we watch, like our experience with education and like the teachers that we see and the people, the successful people that we see. It's like the air that we breathe. And so I think it's, you kind of have to break it down into levels. So I'll just kind of explain some of the overt experience of racism that I've experienced. I would say my first experience was in college when I started dating my wife, Josie. And her dad wasn't really a huge part of her life, but enough so that we still, would see each other, and we would go home and he would be around. And so we would see him from time to time. And he made it very clear that he was not for our relationship. He would say little comments like, I know your marriage is not going to last. Like, I know it's going to fail. And when it does, I'm going to be the one that's going to have to rescue you. He would say things about, our future children, like it's going to be hard for your future children, in this country. And, even the grandchildren that he already had, he would kind of show favoritism, like say little things like, look at these beautiful white babies, and just little comments like that. And what's so crazy is, so my wife, she's half Puerto Rican and half white. And so her mom is white and her dad is Puerto Rican. And so like he was in an interracial marriage, you know what I mean? So, but even in Puerto Rico, there's like a skin color like gradient, and he was proud because his skin was lighter than everybody else's. He was like a light Puerto Rican. Wow. And so he even has prejudice towards other Puerto Ricans, like the darker your skin, like the lesser you are. Mm-hmm. And so so that was kind of like my first experience. And then after we got married, we moved to Wilmington, North Carolina. And that was like my first ministry job at a church, and it was very multicultural, and I loved it. And the first, like right after we got there, one night we were coming back from the movie theater, and I was driving, Josie was in the passenger seat, and all of a sudden I see a cop coming behind me, and I check my speed to make sure I'm not, I'm not going past the speed limit, like I'm good. And so he turns his lights on, turns the siren on, and so I pull over, and all of a sudden I see like 2 or 3 more cars come out of nowhere, two or three more cop cars. And so they start yelling at us, telling us to get our hands up. They draw their guns. And so I'm like, automatically, I'm like going through my head, like, try not to like move, try not to do anything crazy. And so they ask us like, where you guys coming from? And I'm like, we just came from the movies. And so they were like, let me see your movie ticket. And so I show them the ticket. And then they explained that they were actually, this is what they told us, they were looking for a stolen car. And the car that I was driving was the same color. It wasn't the same model, but the same color. And so they let us go. They didn't apologize or anything. As far as the church, like I said, our church was very multicultural. And so, and this is, by the way, this is the South. And so, right. Like North Carolina, like there's a lot of history, racial history there. Yeah. And we lived right on the coast. And so, they had history of, like, those were the slave ships, where they brought in slaves right on the coast. There's still land and places that are still called plantations there. And so it's like you feel the tension in the air. And so we had, there was instances where we would find nooses on our property. We found bananas on our front door with a note saying, "These are for your monkeys." Our youth group one time were meeting outside of the church, and a car drove by and yelled the N-word at our kids. And so yeah, those are just some of like the overt like experiences that I've kind of dealt with over the years.
And you're how old?
31.
31. So that's within the past
So that was, yeah, 5-6 years. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's so powerful to hear. And that's where I always come back to. I think that one of the biggest proactive things we can do, anybody, is just have friends that don't look like you and have the same background as you.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you put a name and a relationship and a story into your heart of someone that you know and love, the whole thing changes. You know, the proximity to the problem is ultimately the only thing I've seen that actually changes the heart.
Absolutely.
Because that's where, like, when I hear those stories that you tell, it's just, I mean, it's brutal, but I know it's not just that. So you used a word there that I think is good for us all to dig into just a little, because I know most of the people listening to this are not gonna be that overtly racist.
Right.
You know, that's maybe we have some that'll watch it. I hope we have some watch it. Hope we can get them to church and Jesus and all that. But most of our people watching this are not overtly racist. We use the word microaggression.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that, and like some of the things, like when you say microaggression. Yeah. And what are maybe some things that come to your mind, or maybe that you've experienced with that term?
Yeah. So, and this is where like understanding the history of our country comes into play. I think I'm a firm believer of like, once you look back and actually find the truth of like how our country was built, it'll actually answer a lot of the questions that you have, because it'll start to make sense, like why certain things are the way they are, you know. But one of the things that plays such a huge role is this racial narrative that has been pushed down to us, like just from being raised in this country. Again, like the books that we read, the movies that we watch, the people that we look up to that are successful, presidents of universities are primarily white. You know, it's like all these narratives. And so you got to think to yourself, like, I think we all have to ask ourselves, and this is not even like exclusive to white people. This is anybody who is grown up in America, because we've all, like, it's all affected us, you know? And so I think we all have to ask ourselves, like, what goes through our minds when we see a minority? What goes through our minds when we see a Latino person or a Black person or even a white person? And so I'll give you just a couple examples of like just some microaggression or subtle like things of racism that go on more like on a day-to-day basis that you may not even, you know, notice. At our church, there was one time where we had a Black guy on our worship team that sang that the past weekend, and a lady, he had a hat on, and a lady came up to me and was like, man, that guy was looking real thuggish on Sunday. There was another incident where I was actually in a meeting of some sort with a team, and we were kind of planning out like on stage who was going to go where, and somebody drew a black dot on the whiteboard and said, "Oh, that's Myron," like as a joke. You know, little stuff like that that you don't even like. And again, like a lot of people didn't even bat an eye. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like stuff that you aren't aware of, that's just like natural because that's the culture that we've grown up in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's so interesting you say that, because when I hear you walk through some of those microaggressions, my first thought is, well, I bet there's some people listening that felt the same thing I felt. All right. The same thing I felt when you said that, and the same thing went through my mind. I'll get the confession out and we'll get raw like we always do. Mm-hmm. First thought I had was, what's wrong with the black dot?
Right.
but that's coming from a majority perspective.
Right.
Because you are a minority in a majority white church.
Right.
And so that already puts you in a position where you're singled out all the time.
Right.
You're treated different all the time.
Yeah.
And so then that microaggression, now it pushes you even further away.
Right.
And for the majority to not think about that. I mean, I know for me, putting myself in context where I'm the minority and feeling what that's like,
Mm-hmm.
is what helped me understand the microaggression concept.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in Indy, Country Kitchen, one of my favorite restaurants in Indy,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, predominantly African American restaurant, and
Mm-hmm.
we lived really close to there, and we'd go all the time. But man, every time we went, it was just so awkward. We were the only white family in there,
Yeah.
and you just feel like you're being examined, and you're not, but you feel like you feel out of place. You feel like
People
if you
staring at you. Yeah.
yeah, and you know, and so but that's I think for me that's when I really started to understand the microaggression thing. That
Mm-hmm.
every little thing, like when I felt like our family at that restaurant was getting our food later than everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
probably wasn't happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and maybe it was, I don't know. I mean, because I think there's microaggressions on all sides. But
Sure.
it wasn't until I actually felt like a minority and I could experience what that's like in my heart
Mm-hmm.
that I could even begin to have empathy or even understand the microaggression stuff. But man, the whole thing about the history piece is so dead on.
Mm-hmm.
And some of this is, I mean, there's just so much content coming out right now, which is a beautiful thing. There's so much getting put on social media, and there's so much in the news, which is, it's great. I mean, that's where my hope in all this, and I know you hope for the same, is I hope this is a cultural tipping point for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
That it hasn't been, this issue hasn't been given its proper treatment,
Mm-hmm.
but that now, because of all the factors going into it,
Mm-hmm.
it's reached a boiling point in our culture, and that maybe, just maybe, now people will go back and learn the history.
Right.
People will begin to put themselves in context where they're the minority, so they can feel what it's like.
Yeah.
And that maybe the heart will begin to change in that. So, man, when you think about all that, like, to you, how, like, and this is a kind of just off the cuff question for us, like, what is it that you are hoping to see change in people's hearts? Like when you think about the average white Jesus follower, the average white person, whether they follow Jesus or not, what are you hoping changes in their heart?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit on it already. I think the best way to change your heart is to get in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, that's the only way that you're gonna feel. That's the only way that you're gonna empathize with somebody else.
Yeah.
If you're not close to them, then you're not gonna feel it.
Yeah.
It's not gonna affect you enough to care. You know what I mean? And so I think relationship is the best tool. Like, a relationship is the gift from God. You know, like, he wants us to be in relationship with people who don't look like us, who don't vote the same way that we do, you know, who don't listen to the same music. Like, he wants us to be in relationship with different people and to do life with them, you know. That's when I think the heart change happens. I think we can do all the education that we want,
Mm-hmm.
and we can be knowledgeable, but that's not going to change our heart necessarily. You know what I mean? You gotta empathize, and that only comes through relationship.
What do you say to, and this is just a conversation I had just the other day with a white friend of mine, and they were telling me that they don't have many friends that they would feel comfortable with, or even friends that they feel close enough to have some of these conversations.
Yeah.
But the comment that they made was, I would feel weird going up to one of my few acquaintances that are black or brown, and saying, hey, could we grab lunch sometime? Because I'd like to get to know you. Or, hey, I'd like to grab lunch sometime to ask you what it's like to be black, because I'm trying to learn. Like, this person was saying that would make them feel weird, because they don't want people to feel like they're tools for our only, you know. But like, you, if someone came up to you and said, hey man, I don't have a lot of minority friends, and I kind of know you, I've seen you around, would you be open to having lunch sometime? Would you, as a black guy, go, yeah, that's weird, don't do that? Or do you say that that's like, oh no, we would, like, you would welcome that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's weird. I think, you know, as long as that's not your only agenda, like, that's not your first priority. The priority should be, I want to get to know you because I just want to get to know you. Right. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so, but I also think there's something beautiful in just the honesty to be like, I don't have many friends that don't look like me. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I want to get to know you just because I want to get to know you. You know what I mean? And so I don't think that has to be weird at all, honestly. Like, I think we make it weird, but it doesn't have to be.
I mean, white people are gonna make it weird.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But no, I think that's good for us to hear, man. I think that's because I think we need to take as much of the burden as we can on both educating ourselves and putting ourselves out there relationally to make new friends.
Yeah.
And then even if we do get burned or it gets weird or we get rejected, if we stop after one attempt or two attempts, man, like I just think I'm trying to make sure that I'm taking the burden on myself personally,
right,
to root this out of my heart, to expand my social circles and to expand my knowledge,
right,
and not put it on the system, the government, Black people to make me better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we touched on something that I think we got to get to, though, is your experience with the police.
Yeah.
All right. So, we've got Colorado Springs there's a lot of military families. There's a lot of, ex-military that are, armed, they're cops, police, or armed forces. And, and I know that I know what your heart is in this, but I think it's just a good conversation that many people are interested in having and interested in hearing, but I think are nervous to ask.
Yeah.
Because of the police brutality cases, because of George Floyd, because of all of this. For you, how do you approach and what is your view of the police in this day and age as a follower of Jesus?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's bigger than like good cops and bad cops. Like, even though I've had some bad experiences with police, I don't view the police as bad, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, but I think the issue is so much bigger than like, there's just a few bad apples or these are good cops. Like, I think that the system of racism infects every area, like not just police. I mean, it's because it's like the air that we breathe. So you see it everywhere. You see it in businesses and churches, in police. You see it everywhere. And so I think once we kind of understand it that way, it takes it a little bit higher than just saying like, this is a good cop and this is a bad cop. I think it takes it to the step of like, we actually have to confront, again, the narrative that's been pushed down and the system at large that is affecting the way that we think, the way that we've been raised to think about things. Because at the end of the day, we are all people that have been raised in this country. And we all have different positions. Like, I saw a post on Facebook that said, you grow up with these friends and, maybe they've been brought up a certain way. Maybe they had somebody who was, had racist, thoughts or whatever in their family. And then, these people grow up to be judges in positions of power and pastors, and policemen and musicians or whatever their jobs are. And it's like, it's not, so you can't really single out one without talking about the larger issue, which is, again, like this narrative. I keep saying the narrative, but this narrative that like our country has kind of pressed down into us, it affects everything, And so I think that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, I think that's good because to me, I think it's a great way for us to, a good framework for us all to think about it is that we're not trying to demonize a certain occupation.
Yeah.
We're trying to say that we were all born into a way of living and a way of thinking.
Yeah.
Like in our house, there's this step coming in from the garage into the house, and our kids trip on that step almost every freaking time. And they're gonna have to just like learn to take a bigger step because of the way that those stairs are built. They're gonna have to take a bigger step coming into the house, or they're gonna keep tripping on it.
Right.
Because this is the house that it's been built for them. They live in it. They've known nothing else. But if they don't do something intentionally to retrain their minds, to retrain
Right.
their hearts, they will keep tripping on it over and over and over. And I think that's like something I'm trying to think of in all this, that this is like, no one was born and said, I want to be racist.
Right. I think another thought too, I was going to say is like, whatever, we say good and bad, you can be a good person and still have racist thoughts. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I think it goes beyond, it goes beyond morality.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you can be the best person, but like the racist thoughts come and you have to be intentional about addressing them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just, you have to be intentional with addressing the thoughts.
And that's where I think the follower of Jesus has such a leg up. We should have a leg up in this, because we have the freedom to say, yeah, man, our hearts are messed up.
Yeah.
And we don't have to hide it. We don't have to act like we don't have to be fearful of being an evil person. We know our hearts are dark. We know that our hearts are messed up. And so we can just come out and say like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I just thought that.
Right.
Like, I can't believe I just saw a black man walking down the street and my first thought was protect my wife.
Yeah.
Whoa, where did that come from? But like, as the follower of Jesus, man, because of Jesus dying on the cross for us, we've got freedom and forgiveness, and we can confess without any fear. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, when our church talks about being raw, that's where I want us to get to. And that's where I think God wants us to be, is that we can bring the worst parts out of us and just say, this is what I did. This is what I thought. And James says, confess your sins to one another and you'll be healed. We don't have to, we've got freedom in it.
Yeah.
But I think I think you're right. People think that good people can't be racist. That's such a good point, Byron.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful piece, because I think everyone is deathly terrified of being or being labeled or being called racist.
Right. Because then it's like, you're saying I'm a bad person now. You know what I mean?
Right. Man.
Yeah.
Golly. So, man, I was going to ask you about the, Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter.
Yeah.
I think I think there's enough content out there right now that is combating that, which is beautiful.
Yeah. But
for anyone that maybe isn't online or isn't, well, if they're watching this, they're online. I'm not talking about this church online. But if still 14 weeks into the church online, still not really getting the hang of it. But for anyone that's maybe not consuming all of that content right now on social media and in the news, like, give us a brief snapshot for you. Like, why in your mind is All Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter? When someone posts, man, no, All Lives Matter, how does that hit you, and why in your mind is that kind of like an odd response?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I never really understood that whole debate, because like, obviously the ideal situation is that all lives matter, right? Like, we can all agree that that's what we want. Like, all lives should matter. However, historically in our country, Black lives have not mattered. You know what I mean? So, and so we can't really say all lives matter until it's proven that Black lives matter. Yeah. And so I think, it's one thing to have, if you have an issue with the movement of Black Lives Matter and like the way that they protest or whatever, I don't really know all the details with that, but just the phrase Black Lives Matter, I don't think that we don't really need a rebuttal after that. We can't, that should be able to stand alone. Yeah. And because that's the community that's hurting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that statement should be able to stand alone, with the assumption that, yes, we want all lives to matter, but Black lives have to matter for that statement to be true. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so good. And that's another one where I think relationship is so key, that if you have a Black or brown friend and you just ask them that honest question, like, tell me about Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. Yeah. And then just like you just did, it makes so much sense. But I know for many, it's hard because they feel like there's preferential treatment given. And yes, there is preferential treatment being given in that statement because there's a deficit.
Right. Yeah.
We're not operating off the same page. We're not It's not equal.
Right.
And I think that's the assumption most people think. It's all equal right now. It's like,
Yeah. No.
it's not. It's not. Well, man, I know we could go on for hours and hours, and I love this conversation so much. I got let's maybe just hit kind of these last 2 or 3 questions I want to run by you, and then we'll wrap it up. And we got a treat to wrap this thing up with that Myron knows about, but none of y'all know about yet. So what do you hope for, in the months to come from your white brothers and sisters, and think specifically, the followers of Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
What do you hope to see from your white brothers and sisters in the months to come?
Yeah. I think, the big question is like, what happens after a lot of this dies down? What happens in the gap between George Floyd and the next incident? I think one thing that we kind of have to pray for is for God to open our eyes. Like, I think, it's one thing to say, I'm going to speak out when I see something, or I'm going to, stand up for change when I, see something. But it's like, we can't really do anything until we see it, right? We can't change what we can't see. And I think the one of the issues has been the fact that a lot of people are blind to it. Like, we can't see it. We can't see the things that happen every day. We see like the obvious ones, right, in the news. Yeah. But like, we can't call out, like we were talking about the microaggressions, we can't call out the subtle incidents of racism. And so I think we kind of have to pray for, like, God, would you open up my eyes to be able to see? Would you give me your eyes? Yeah. And I think, yes. And I think some of that comes again through education, understanding our history. We have to know, like, the history of our country. Yeah. I think that will open up our eyes a lot. I think, another thing too is, I think the relationship piece is key as well. I think it's hard to empathize if we are not, like, in relationship with somebody. And I know that can be hard if you don't have a lot of, minorities around you, but you have to be that much more intentional. Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like we are more connected now than ever before. Mm-hmm. Like, we're on a Zoom call right now. You know what I mean? So you don't have to be physically proximate to be proximate, you know? And so, like, do we have access to be in relationship with people all over the world? You know what I mean? So I think those two pieces are kind of what I hope for.
Yeah. Turn the tables on what do you hope for in the weeks and months to come for our Black and brown brothers and sisters who are following Jesus?
Yeah.
What are you hoping and praying for them to see from them in the months to come?
Yeah. Oh man, I healing first and foremost. Again, I see so many minorities just hurt. Mm-hmm. And you got to think about, again, this isn't just about George Floyd, right? This is trauma. A lot of the things that we're seeing right now is trauma from generations of oppression. And so, I think for the Black community, sometimes it gets to a point where you snap, you kind of just like, I can't do this anymore. And so I think, I pray for healing. I think I also, like, want to see change. I think I want to see change in, like, the racial equity, in the spaces that we, go to for work and to church. Like, I want to see change in leadership. I want to see change in representation. I want to see change in the education system, Yeah. And so, again, we got to address the bigger issues at hand to change all that stuff. But I think that's what I hope for, for the Black community.
So good. That's so good, man. Yeah, I just keep thinking, I hope and pray that it's more than a social media post.
Mm-hmm.
That this isn't a flash in the pan. I mean, this is, I told Brittany this. I mean, I confessed this to my wife a couple weeks ago. I think it was with the Ahmaud Arbery one that happened. And she was like, "Are you gonna post something online?" I'm like, "Oh, man, I mean, I feel like we post. I mean, there's so many that happen."
Yeah.
And there was that part of me that thought, well, that's like, we can't get tired. We can't grow weary of being a voice and grow weary of doing good and of bringing attention to it. But I'm like you, man. I just want to see where the practical change happens.
Right.
In our own hearts, systemically, from our government, leadership structures, the whole deal. I think the way you put that's just beautiful. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, last question I got for you is, what do you think like Jesus thinks about all this? Like, what's the heart of the one that we come together nonstop and talk about, and we sing to him, and we circle around his teaching and his message and his heart, and we talk to him nonstop, man. What do you think Jesus is thinking in all this?
Yeah. I think, when we think about reconciliation, like Jesus was the ultimate reconciler. Like that's what he came to do, right? He came to reconcile us back to God, first and foremost. But also it's through Jesus that we can become reconciled back to each other.
Yeah.
That's the gospel. And so, I think it's funny that, like you hear somebody talk about racial injustice or, whatever's happening in our country. And sometimes you hear Christians say, man, I wish you would just stick to preaching the gospel, or I wish you would just, preach on Jesus. And I'm like, that is the gospel. You know what I mean? How can you say we're preaching the gospel if we never talk about reconciliation? And so I think that's the heart of Jesus. I also think Jesus was for the marginalized people, right? Obviously he was for everybody, but he made a point to spend a lot of his time with the people that society looked down on, right? The outcasts, the prostitutes, the sick, the oppressed. And so I think we also have to follow his lead in that and look at our society today and ask ourselves, like, who is that in our society, in our country? Even historically, who has the marginalized been? And how do we, as Christians, as followers of Jesus, how do we come alongside of them and elevate them?
Yeah.
How do we serve them? Right? How do we minister to them? How do we fight for them? And so, yeah, I think that's his heart.
That's so good, man. That's so good, man. I am so grateful for you doing this with us, man. I mean, this is huge. I know our church is just going to love what you've poured into us today and what we've received from you, man. I think, you are, one, because your character, like the way you love Jesus and the way you're a godly husband and a godly father, and your heritage from one of the strongest Jesus following families I've ever known. It's so amazing to see God has raised you up in leadership, and he's given you this amazing character and now this platform, and for a time like this. I mean, this is a time when your voice is needed and your words and your heart are needed more than ever, man. So we're so grateful that you took time out of it. And so, man, I want to pray for you, and on behalf of our church, pray for you and pray for all of us as well. And then the treat I told you guys about is that when I'm done praying, Myron is actually going to lead us in worship today. So when I'm done praying, y'all better stand to your feet in your living rooms, wherever you're watching it. And he's gonna lead us in singing to Jesus today and telling Jesus how grateful we are for him. So let me pray for you, Myron. Let me pray for us, and then we'll sing.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for being a God who makes all things work together for the good of those who love you. That the worst the worst circumstances, what man intended for evil, what the devil himself intended for evil, you can take it and turn it into something good. And so we are trusting that you'll do that right now, that this won't just be a social media post, that this will be real lasting change. And we're asking for that, God. We know you want it too. And God, I thank you for Myron. I thank you for his incredible wife, Josie, for their sweet daughter, Elena, for the way that you're using that their family to be a voice in this season, for his ministry, for the way he leads and helps people sing to you and to love you and to worship you with their whole lives. Thank you for that, God. Thank you for his heart and for what he poured into our church today. And God, I pray you continue to give him power and courage and conviction to lead in the days, weeks, and months and years to come. We know that our kingdom, the movement of Jesus followers, is so much better because of Myron. And so we're grateful for him, God. And God, like he said, what he hopes for us, I'm going to pray and ask you to do it, God. Open our heart, open the eyes of our heart, that we might see clearly, that we might see you for who you are, but that we also might see the depths of our heart, the depths of our own sickness, our own need of you, God. That we would see racial justice and reconciliation as not a side issue, but at the very heart of what it means to follow you. And you told us that if we want to love you, we'll love each other. You shrunk everything down and boiled it down to love one another as I have loved you. God, we pray that you open the eyes of our heart, help us to see where we are not loving others as you have loved us, and change us. God, change us from the inside out. And God, I pray that our church, Red Rock, but not just our church, all these churches across the country right now that are talking about this issue, that you would use your followers to go first in this, that we would lead the way for our culture in what it means to be racially reconciled. And we know that all this is possible because your Spirit's in us, your power is at work in us. And your Spirit was powerful enough to raise Christ from the dead. So we know that it can raise these dead parts of our heart to life as well, God. And so we ask you to do that. And we ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
One thing that I think is so important in this season is to remember who our God is, to remember that we serve a risen Savior. He's never lost a battle. He's undefeated. And so I invite you to sing these songs with me as we worship our God together. You're seated on a throne of mercy, your glory shining bright for all to see. Oh God, I will praise you. Magnificent with grace unending, you rescue us with love that never fails. Oh God, I will praise you. Who is like the Lord, strong in battle? Who is like the Lord, mighty to save? Who is like the Lord, King forever? Jesus reigns, Jesus reigns. Yes, you do, Lord. I know that you are always with me. Your presence goes before and goes behind. Oh God, I will praise you. Who is like the Lord, strong in battle? Who is like the Lord, mighty to save? is like the Lord, King forever? Jesus reigns, Jesus reigns. Who is like the Lord, strong in battle? Who is like the Lord, mighty to save? Who is like the Lord, King forever? Jesus reigns, Jesus reigns. You reign, Lord. You reign in all the earth. You reign in all the heavens. You're holy. You're seated on the throne. Nothing can stand against you. You're holy. You reign in all the earth. You reign in all the heavens. You're holy, yeah. You're seated on the throne. Nothing can stand against you, Lord. And who is like the Lord, strong in battle? Who is like the Lord, mighty to save? Who is like the Lord, King forever? Jesus reigns, Jesus reigns. Who is like the Lord, strong in battle? Who is like the Lord, mighty to save? Who is like the Lord, King forever? Jesus reigns, Jesus reigns. You reign in all the earth. You reign in all the heavens. You're holy. You're seated on the throne. Nothing can stand against you. You're holy. You reign, Lord. You reign in all the earth. You reign in all the heavens. You're holy. You're seated on the throne. Nothing can stand against you. You're holy, Lord. Yes, you are. You're holy. You reign above it all, Jesus. There's no one like you, Father. Your name is victory. We rest in your victory, Jesus. You've won it all for us, Lord. Yeah. And you are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. I've tried so hard to see it. Took me so long to believe it, that you choose someone like me to carry your victory. Perfection could never earn it. You give what we don't deserve it. You take the broken things and raise them to glory. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won, and I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. Now I can finally see it. You're teaching me how to receive it. So let all the striving cease. This is my victory. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won, I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated. By the power of your name, I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. Oh, you've conquered it all, Jesus. Yeah. When I lift my voice and shout, every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority Jesus has given me. When I open up my mouth, miracles start breaking out. I have the authority Jesus has given me. When I lift my voice and shout, every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority, yes I do. Jesus has given me. When I open up my mouth, miracles start breaking out. I have the authority, yeah. Jesus has given me. And you are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won, I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated. By the power of your name, I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. Oh, you've conquered it all. Every battle you've won, Jesus. Yeah. And who is the great King of glory, seated on high in the heavens? Oh, Jesus, you alone. You are the Lord God Almighty, strong in compassion and mercy. Oh, Jesus, you alone. I've searched the world for a love that could fill my heart. but nothing compares to the wonder of who you are. Holy, all the earth singing holy, all the angels cry holy, Jesus, you alone, Jesus, you alone. Oh. You set the stars in the heavens, you set the world into motion. Oh, Jesus, you alone. You breathe your life in creation, you walked among your created. Oh, Jesus, you alone. I've searched the world for a love that could fill my heart. Oh, but nothing compares to the wonder of who you are. Holy, all the earth singing holy, all the angels cry holy, Jesus, you alone. You worthy, worthy, all creation sings worthy, all the heavens exalt thee, Jesus, you alone, Jesus, you alone. You shed your blood for salvation, you broke the curse for our freedom. Oh, Jesus, you alone. You rose from death with the morning, you come again in your glory. Oh, Jesus, you alone. Oh, Jesus, you alone. Holy, all the earth singing holy, all the angels cry holy, Jesus, you alone. We sing worthy, worthy, all creation sings worthy, all the heavens exalt thee, Jesus, you alone. And holy, I can't help but sing holy, how my heart cries out holy, Jesus, you alone. And worthy, I lift my voice and sing worthy, I bow my life to exalt thee, Jesus, you alone, Jesus, you alone.
Well, man, what a powerful message from Myron today. That conversation was so incredible and so significant. And I hope that you learned a lot from it. I hope you took away a lot from it. I hope that Jesus is working in your heart like he's working in my heart in the midst of all this. You know, we want to be a church for all people. And so that requires us to be a group of people who are willing to listen to and learn from all people. And so, man, let's be that church that anyone and everyone, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of their background, that anyone and everyone feels welcome and included and part of our family, man. Thank you so much, Myron, for investing in our church today. If you have any questions about anything that you heard, if you need prayer, if you need someone to talk with, head to our info bar on our website, redrockchurch.org. There's people there right now. They're ready to talk with you and to pray with you. Don't forget about Thursday Night Live. Thursday Night Live is a chance for you to get to know me a little bit better, and you can jump on that through our Instagram and our Facebook pages at Red Rock Church. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. and we can have some fun together on Thursday Night Live. And don't forget, next Sunday, we jump back in. A Church the World Needs, Part 2. Don't miss it. Love you guys so much. Miss you like crazy. Can't wait to get back to meeting together. Until then, we'll see you next week.